Captain Lee So-jin walked through the corridors of Nexus 7 station with steady steps. Her black diplomatic uniform was pressed and clean. The silver badge on her chest showed she worked for the Terran Diplomatic Corps. She had spent 3 years preparing for this day. The station was huge and cold. Metal walls stretched in every direction. Aliens from different worlds moved through the halls. Some had scales, others had fur, and many looked nothing like humans at all. But So-jin only cared about one species today, the Valkyrie. Lieutenant Park Jin-woo hurried to catch up with her. His face showed worry. "Captain, are you sure about this meeting? The Valkyrie have been attacking our colonies for months. They killed thousands of people on Kepler Prime." So-jin stopped walking and turned to face him. Her dark eyes were calm, but determined. "That's exactly why we need to talk, Jin-woo. War only brings more death. Diplomacy can end this bloodshed. But they call us soft flesh creatures. They think we're weak because we don't have hard skin like them. What if they don't want peace?" So-jin started walking again. "Every species can be reasoned with. I've studied Valkyrie culture for years. They respect strength, yes, but they also value honor. If we show them we can be strong allies instead of weak enemies, they'll listen." They reached the main conference room. 2 human security guards stood by the door. Inside, the room was set up for the meeting. A long table sat in the center with chairs on both sides. The lights were bright and white. Everything looked clean and official. "The Valkyrie delegation arrived an hour ago," one guard said. "Elder Thakmer brought 12 warriors with him." So-jin nodded. "Good. Show them we respect their customs by bringing their full honor guard." She straightened her uniform one more time. "Jin-woo, you'll sit beside me and take notes. Remember, no sudden movements. Valkyrie see quick actions as threats." The doors opened with a soft hiss. The first thing So-jin noticed was the sound. Valkyrie feet made clicking noises on the metal floor because their bodies were covered in crystal-like armor that grew from their skin. They were tall, much taller than humans, and their faces looked like they were carved from stone. Elder Thakmer walked in first. His crystal armor was dark blue and covered in battle scars. His eyes glowed yellow in the light. Behind him came his warriors, each one bigger and more frightening than the last. They wore no weapons, but their claws looked sharp enough to cut through steel. "Elder Thakmer," So-jin said, bowing her head slightly, "thank you for agreeing to these peace talks. I am Captain Lee So-jin of the Terran Diplomatic Corps." Thakmer looked down at her. His voice sounded like grinding rocks. "Human, you are smaller than I expected. Your people hide behind words while mine bleed in battle." "We hope to end that bleeding today," So-jin replied. She gestured to the table. "Please, let us sit and discuss how our peoples can live in peace." The Valkyrie took their seats across from the humans. Their chairs groaned under their weight. Thakmer's warriors stayed standing behind him, watching everything with their glowing eyes. So-jin opened her datapad and began. "The attacks on human colonies have caused great suffering. But we believe there's been a misunderstanding. Humans are not trying to invade Valkyrie space. We're explorers and traders, not conquerors." "Your ships carry weapons," one of Thakmer's warriors growled. "For defense only," So-jin said calmly. "We face many dangers in space. Pirates, asteroid fields, radiation storms. Our weapons are tools for survival, not conquest." Thakmer leaned forward. His claws scraped against the table. "Survival of the weak. The strong take what they need. The weak beg for mercy." "Strength comes in many forms," So-jin replied. "Humans may not have crystal armor like yours, but we have other gifts. We can build, create, and grow. We can make the galaxy better for everyone." She touched her datapad and a hologram appeared above the table. It showed star charts, trade routes, and resource maps. "Look at what we could accomplish together. Human technology combined with Valkyrie strength. Your people are great warriors, but even warriors need supplies, medicine, and tools." The hologram showed images of human cities, farms, and factories. It showed Valkyrie ships being repaired in human space docks. It showed the 2 species working side by side. We could establish trade agreements, Sojin continued. Humans would provide medical supplies, food, and advanced technology. In return, the Valkyrie could offer protection for trade routes and mineral rights to asteroids in your territory. Several of Thakmer's warriors whispered to each other. Some seemed interested in what they saw, but Thakmer's face grew darker. You think we need your charity? His voice rose like thunder. You think the mighty Valkyrie Empire begs scraps from soft-flesh creatures? Sojin felt the mood in the room change. The temperature seemed to drop. Elder Thakmer, I didn't mean to suggest. You suggest we are weak. Thakmer stood up so fast his chair fell backward. His warriors moved closer. You suggest we cannot provide for ourselves. You dare offer us gifts like we are pets. No, that's not what I meant, Sojin sighed, standing up slowly. Her heart started beating faster. I meant partnership. Equals working together for mutual benefit. Jinwoo's hand moved toward his communicator, but Sojin shook her head slightly. She didn't want to make things worse. THAK single quote around the table. His footsteps echoed in the silent room. Partnership with humans? Equals? He laughed, and it sounded like breaking glass. Look at you. Soft skin, weak bones, tiny claws. You are prey animals pretending to be predators. Elder, please reconsider, Sojin said. She kept her voice steady even though fear was growing. In her chest, war will only hurt both our peoples. War teaches lessons, Thakmer said. He was standing right in front of her now. And it is time your species learned their place in the galaxy. Sojin saw his hand move toward the ceremonial. Blade on his belt. Time seemed to slow down. She heard Jinwoo shout her name. She saw the human guards reaching for their weapons. She saw the Valkyrie warriors moving to block them. The blade was in Thakmer's hand. It gleamed under the lights like a piece of the night sky. Valkyrie ceremonial weapons were not just for show. They were sharp enough to cut through almost anything. Please don't do this, Sojin said. But she saw the decision in his yellow eyes. Your people will learn, Thakmer growled. They will learn what happens to soft flesh that dares stand before the Valkyrie. The blade came down fast. Sojin tried to move, but she was too slow. The weapon hit her right wrist with a sound like a tree branch snapping. Pain exploded through her body. Blood sprayed across the white table. Her hand fell to the floor with a wet thud. Sojin screamed. The sound echoed off the walls and seemed to go on forever. She fell to her knees, holding her bleeding arm against her chest. The world spun around her. Darkness crept in from the edges of her vision. Through the pain and shock, she heard Thakmer speaking to his warriors in their own language. Then he switched to human words so everyone could understand. Let this human live. Let her carry our message back to her people. Tell them the Valkyrie Empire does not negotiate with prey. Tell them what happens to those who forget their place. The last thing Sojin saw before the darkness took her was her own severed hand lying in a pool of blood on the conference room floor. Her career as a diplomat was over, but something else was just beginning. Dr. Kim Yoon-ho ran through the medical bay doors with blood on his hands. Behind him, 2 nurses pushed a stretcher carrying Captain Lee Sojin. Her face was white as paper and sweat covered her forehead. A tourniquet was wrapped tight around her right arm where her hand used to be. Get me 2 units of synthetic blood and prep the surgical suite now, Dr. Kim shouted. He had been the station's head medical officer for 5 years, but he had never seen anything this brutal. The Valkyrie had left her to bleed out like an animal. Lieutenant Park Jinwoo paced back and forth in the waiting area. His uniform was stained with Sojin's blood from when he carried her out of the conference room. His hands shook as he tried to contact Earth Command on his communicator. This is Lieutenant Park Jinwoo on Nexus 7 station. Emergency priority message for Admiral Choi Min-seok. Captain Lee Sojin has been severely injured in a diplomatic incident. Request immediate medical evacuation and military response. The voice that came back was cold and professional. Lieutenant, please clarify the nature of the incident. Was this an accident? Jinwoo's anger flared. Accident? Elder Thakmer cut off her hand with a ceremonial blade. Right in front of everyone. This was deliberate mutilation. There was silence on the channel for several seconds. Then, "Stand by, Lieutenant. Admiral Choi is being notified. A response fleet will be dispatched immediately." In the operating room, Dr. Kim worked to save Sojin's life. The Valkyrie blade had cut clean through bone and muscle. The wound was precise, almost surgical. It was meant to send a message, not kill quickly. "Blood pressure is stabilizing," one nurse reported. "Good. Begin tissue regeneration therapy on the damaged area. We need to prepare it for a cybernetic attachment later." Dr. Kim looked at the monitors showing Sojin's vital signs. "She's strong. She survived this." But as he worked, Dr. Kim wondered if surviving was enough. He had seen soldiers lose limbs in battle before. Some recovered and returned to normal lives. Others were changed forever by the trauma. Something told him that Captain Lee Sojin would never be the same person who walked into that conference room. 3 hours later, Sojin woke up in the medical bay's recovery room. The first thing she felt was the absence. Her right arm ended in clean white bandages. The hand that had written diplomatic reports and signed peace treaties was gone. Forever. The second thing she felt was rage. It started as a small fire in her chest and grew bigger with each heartbeat. The Valkyrie had not just injured her, they had humiliated her. They had treated her like she was nothing. "Captain?" Jinwoo stood beside her bed. His eyes were red from crying. "How do you feel?" "Like I've been taught a lesson," Sojin said. Her voice was rough and dry. "Where are they now?" "The Valkyrie delegation left the station 6 hours ago. The station commander couldn't stop them because of neutrality laws. They broadcast a message to the entire galaxy about what they did to you." Sojin closed her eyes. "What did they say?" Jinwoo looked uncomfortable. "They said you were an example. That all humans who dare stand before the Valkyrie will be broken. They called you a soft-flesh creature who learned her place." The rage in Sojin's chest burned hotter. "Show me." "Captain, you should rest. Show me the message." Jinwoo reluctantly activated a wall screen. Elder Thakmer appeared, still wearing his battle-scarred crystal armor. Behind him stood his warriors, their yellow eyes glowing in the light. "People of the galaxy," Thakmer said in his grinding voice. "Today a human diplomat dared to offer the mighty Valkyrie Empire charity. She thought her soft-flesh species could bargain with warriors. She has learned the price of such arrogance." The image switched to security footage from the conference room. Sojin watched herself fall to her knees as blood sprayed across the table. She watched her own hand hit the floor. The Valkyrie had made sure everyone could see her moment of complete helplessness. "Let this be a lesson to all who would challenge Valkyrie strength," Thakmer continued. "We do not negotiate with prey animals. We teach them their place in the natural order." The message ended. Sojin stared at the blank screen for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, colder. "They wanted to teach me about strength," she said. "I think it's time I learned." Dr. Kim entered the room carrying a datapad. "Captain, I have good news. The tissue regeneration is going well. In a few weeks, you'll be ready for a cybernetic replacement. The new models are almost as good as natural hands." "Almost?" Sojin asked. "Well, they're actually stronger than natural hands, more precise too. Some people say they're better than the original." Dr. Kim tried to smile. "You'll be back to your diplomatic work in no time." Sojin looked at her bandaged arm. "Doctor, what do you know about Valkyrie anatomy?" The question seemed to surprise him. "Not much, I'm afraid. They're very secretive about their biology." "Why do you ask?" "Just curious about my new friends." 3 days later, Admiral Choi Min-sek arrived at Nexus 7 with a small fleet of human warships. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been fighting alien threats for 20 years and had seen too much violence. He found Sojin in the medical bay's physical therapy room. She was learning to use her new cybernetic hand. The replacement was sleek and silver with joints that moved smoother than natural fingers. "Captain Lee," the Admiral said, "I came as soon as I heard. The entire fleet is outraged by what happened to you. Sojin looked up from the hand exercises she was doing. Admiral Choi, thank you for coming. I'm here to take you home. You've, done enough. No one expects you to return to diplomatic service after this trauma. Home? Sojin flexed her new fingers. They responded perfectly to her thoughts. What if I don't want to go home? Admiral Choi sat down across from her. Sojin, I know you're angry. We all are. But revenge won't bring back your hand or undo what they did to you. I'm not talking about revenge. Sojin's new hand closed into a fist. I'm talking about education. The Valkyrie seem to think humans are weak. Maybe it's time we showed them how wrong they are. The diplomatic corps won't approve any aggressive action. They want to minimize the incident and try peaceful. Contact again later. Sojin stood up. The movement was smooth and controlled. Then maybe I'm done with the diplomatic corps. Admiral Choi studied her face. He had seen that look before in the eyes of soldiers who had lost everything and found something harder in its place. What are you saying, Captain? I'm saying the Valkyrie wanted to teach me a lesson about strength. Mission accomplished. Sojin walked to the window that looked out at the stars. But now I want to teach them a lesson too. And what lesson is that? Sojin raised her cybernetic hand and looked at it in the starlight. The metal fingers gleamed like weapons. That sometimes when you cut off a hand, it grows back as something much more dangerous. Admiral Choi was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was carefully neutral. If you're serious about this path, there are unofficial channels. Training programs that don't officially exist? Places where people learn skills that diplomats don't usually need? I'm listening. Titan. Base, it's not on any public record. The kind of place where broken soldiers learn to be whole again, or where whole soldiers learn to be something else entirely. Sojin turned away from the window. Her dark eyes were no longer calm and diplomatic. They burned with something that made even an admiral take a step back. When can I leave? Are you sure about this? Once you go down this path, there's no going back to who you were before. Sojin looked at her severed reflection in the dark window. The idealistic diplomat who had believed in peace was already gone. What stood here now was something the Valkyrie had created with their blade. Good, she said. I didn't like who I was before. 6 months after losing her hand, Lee Sojin no longer existed in any official records. The former diplomat had vanished like smoke, leaving only whispers and rumors behind. Those who asked were told she had died from her injuries. Those who knew better kept their mouths shut. Titan base sat in the shadow of Saturn's largest moon, hidden from scanning equipment by electromagnetic fields and military-grade stealth technology. It was a place where broken soldiers came to be rebuilt and where the Human Defense Force trained specialists for missions that didn't officially happen. Sojin stood in the arrival bay, looking at the gray metal walls and harsh lighting. Everything here was designed for function, not comfort. There were no windows, no decorations, nothing to distract from the serious business of war. A woman approached her. She was short and stocky with scars on her arms and a cybernetic eye that glowed blue in the artificial light. Her uniform had no name tag, but the insignia showed she was a master sergeant. You must be the diplomat, the woman said. Her voice had a slight accent that suggested she came from one of the outer colonies. I'm Master Sergeant Oh Jin. I'll be responsible for your training. Former diplomat, Sojin corrected. That person died on Nexus 7, Oh Jin walked in a circle around Sojin, studying her like a piece of equipment. Good. Diplomats try to solve problems with words. Here, we solve problems with action. She stopped in front of Sojin and looked directly into her eyes. Tell me, former diplomat, why are you here? To learn. Learn what? Sojin flexed her cybernetic fingers. How to be strong enough that no one will ever cut off my hand again. Oh Jin smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. Wrong answer. Strength isn't about protecting yourself. It's about making your enemies afraid to try. She turned and started walking toward the main facility. Follow me. Your real education starts now. The next 6 months were harder than anything Sojin had experienced in her entire life. She woke up at 0500 hours every day and didn't stop moving until lights out at 2200. Every muscle in her body ached. Her cybernetic hand sparked and overheated from constant use. Hyjin taught her hand-to-hand combat using techniques from a dozen different worlds. Human martial arts mixed with alien fighting styles. Sojin learned to move her body like a weapon, to strike without warning, to kill without hesitation. Combat is not about fairness, Hyjin said during a particularly brutal training session. Combat is about winning. The enemy who shows mercy dies first. In the Weapons Bay Master, Chief Kim Yeon-soo taught Sojin to use every type of gun, blade, and explosive device in the human arsenal. Her cybernetic hand gave her advantages that surprised even experienced soldiers. She could grip weapons tighter, aim steadier, and reload faster than anyone with natural fingers. Your mechanical hand doesn't get tired, Kim Yeon-soo explained. It doesn't shake from fear or cold. Use that advantage? But the most important lessons came from Commander Nam Tae-hyun in the tactical warfare classroom. He was a thin man with intelligent eyes who had spent 20 years studying alien military strategies. The walls of his classroom were covered with star charts, battle plans, and detailed anatomical diagrams of various species. Know your enemy better than they know themselves, he told Sojin. The Valkyrie think they understand warfare because they've been fighting tribal battles for thousands of years. But they've never faced an enemy who studied them the way we study them. Sojin spent hours memorizing Valkyrie battle tactics, cultural traditions, and psychological weaknesses. She learned that their crystal armor had joints that could be exploited. She discovered that their honor code forced them to fight in predictable patterns. Most importantly, she realized that their greatest strength, their pride, was also their greatest weakness. They see war as a chance to prove individual courage, Commander Nam explained. Humans see war as a problem to be solved with the minimum number of casualties on our side. During combat simulations, Sojin began developing her own fighting style. She combined the honor-focused dueling methods of the Valkyrie with the pragmatic ruthlessness of human special forces. The result was something that surprised her instructors. In one exercise, she faced off against Corporal Lee Sang-min, one of the base's most experienced close combat specialists. He attacked using standard human military techniques. Fast, efficient, designed to end fights quickly. Sojin met his charge but fought back using modified Valkyrie forms. She made the battle look ceremonial and formal while using every dirty trick Hyjin had taught her. When Lee Sang-min expected her to follow Valkyrie honor codes, she struck from unexpected angles. When he tried to adapt to human tactics, she shifted back to alien fighting patterns. The fight ended with Lee Sang-min on the ground and Sojin's training blade at his throat. "What the hell was that?" he gasped. "Something new," Sojin replied. Word of her unique combat style spread through the base. Other trainees started asking to spar with her, curious about the former diplomat who fought like nothing they'd seen before. Most lost badly. Captain Song Hwan-woo, one of the base's psychological warfare experts, took special interest in her development. "You're not just learning to fight," he told her during one of their sessions. "You're learning to think like your enemy while staying true to human principles." That's a dangerous combination. Dangerous for who? Sojin asked. For anyone who underestimates you. As the months passed, Sojin's body grew stronger and her mind grew harder. The cybernetic hand that had once reminded her of her helplessness became a symbol of her transformation. She modified it herself, adding grip strength and reaction speed that surpassed anything biology could provide. Late at night, when the base was quiet, she would practice alone in the empty training rooms. She moved through combat forms with mechanical precision, her metal fingers cutting through the air like knives. Sometimes she imagined Elder Thakmer standing in front of her, his yellow eyes glowing with contempt. The fantasy always ended the same way, with the Valkyrie leader on the ground and Sojin standing over him, victorious. But revenge fantasies weren't enough anymore. As her skills grew, Sojin began thinking bigger. The Valkyrie had called humans weak. They had broadcast that message across the galaxy, showing her mutilation as proof of human helplessness. She wanted to send a different message. During her final evaluation, Sojin faced 3 opponents at once, all experienced soldiers who had volunteered to test her abilities. The fight took place in a mock battlefield with obstacles, variable lighting, and simulated weapon fire. Sojin moved through the combat zone like a ghost. She used Valkyrie honor tactics to draw the first opponent into a formal duel, then switched to human dirty fighting to take him down quickly. The second opponent tried to flank her, but she anticipated the move using psychological profiles she had memorized. The third lasted less than 30 seconds. Master Sergeant O'Hyjin watched from the observation deck with the other instructors. When the exercise ended, she activated the intercom. "Trainee designation Ghost, you are cleared for advanced operations." Sojin stood among her defeated opponents, breathing hard but victorious. She looked up at the observation window where her instructors were gathered. "What happens now?" she asked. O'Hyjin's voice crackled through the speakers. "Now you stop being a student and start being a weapon. There's someone who wants to meet you. Someone who can give you the resources to do what we both know you're planning." That evening, Sojin sat in her small quarters, looking at her reflection in the dark window. The woman staring back was nothing like the diplomat who had walked into that conference room a year ago. This person had muscles like cables, scars from countless training injuries, and eyes that burned with controlled fury. Her cybernetic hand rested on her knee, its metal surface reflecting the room's harsh light. Tomorrow she would learn what came after training. Tomorrow she would begin the real work. The Valkyrie had wanted to teach her about strength. They had succeeded beyond their wildest nightmares, but the lesson wasn't over yet. The news came during Sojin's morning combat training. She was sparring with Sergeant Ko Min-young when Commander Nam Tae-hyun burst into the training room, his face pale and his hands shaking. "Turn on the news feed," he said, his voice barely. Above a whisper, "Channel 7, emergency broadcast." Ko Min-young lowered her practice weapon and activated the wall screen. The image that appeared made Sojin's blood turn to ice. Smoke rose from burning buildings. Bodies lay scattered in the streets. The banner at the bottom of the screen read, "Valkyrie attack on New Bisan, 300,000 confirmed dead." The reporter's voice was professional but strained. The Valkyrie Empire launched a surprise attack on the civilian colony of New Bisan. Yesterday at 0800 local time, 3 battle fleets overwhelmed the planet's minimal defenses within hours. What followed can only be described as systematic slaughter. Sojin sat down hard on a training bench. New Bisan wasn't just any colony. Her younger sister, Park Min-ae, worked there as a teacher in the settlement's main school. The settlement that helped build communities for new families arriving from Earth. Survivors report that Valkyrie warriors went door to door, killing civilians regardless of age or gender. The reporter continued. Children were not spared. The attackers seemed particularly focused on collecting trophies from their victims. The image switched to shaky camera footage taken by a survivor. Sojin watched Valkyrie warriors walking through burning streets, carrying human heads mounted on metal spikes. Their crystal armor was stained with blood and their yellow eyes glowed with satisfaction. "Oh no," Ko Min-young whispered. "Sojin, didn't your sister work there?" Sojin finished. Her voice was completely flat, empty of all emotion. "She helped run the Children's Education Center." Commander Nam was already working on his datapad, unchecking the casualty lists. "Maybe she made it to the evacuation ships?" Sojin stood up slowly. Her cybernetic hand was clenched so tight that servo motors whined in protest. "She didn't evacuate." "How can you be sure?" "Because I know Min-ae. She would never leave the children behind." Sojin's voice grew quieter with each word. "She'd stay until the last child was safe, even if it killed her." The news feed switched to a Valkyrie broadcast. Elder Thakmur appeared on screen, standing in what looked like the center of New Bisan's main square. Behind him, human buildings burned. At his feet lay piles of personal belongings taken from the dead. People of the galaxy, Thakmor said in his grinding voice. Today, the Velkari Empire has delivered another lesson to the soft flesh species called humans. They built this colony on the edge of our territory without permission. They thought distance would protect them from consequences. The camera panned across the destruction. Sojin saw the school where her sister worked. The roof had collapsed and the walls were blackened with soot. Small toys and books were scattered in the rubble. Let this colony serve as a warning, Thakmor continued. Humans are prey animals. When prey animals forget their place, predators must remind them. We have taken trophies from 300,000 soft-flesh creatures to mark this victory. Commander Nam's datapad beeped. He looked at the screen and his face went gray. Sojin, I'm sorry. Park Min-ae is listed among the confirmed dead. Her body was found in the school's basement with 15 children. It looks like she was trying to hide them. Something broke inside Sojin. Not her heart, that had already been damaged beyond repair on Nexus 7. This was something deeper. Some final connection to the person she used to be, the diplomat who believed in peaceful solutions and the goodness of all species. That person died completely in that moment. Sojin walked out of the training room without saying a word. Ko Min-young started to follow her, but Commander Nam held up a hand. Let her go. She needs time to process this. But Sojin wasn't processing anything. She was moving with mechanical precision toward the base's weapons development section. Her mind was completely clear and focused on a single goal. The workshop was run by Master Chief Kang Hae-won, a scarred veteran who had lost both legs fighting aliens in the Proxima Wars. He looked up from the weapon he was assembling when Sojin entered. Ghost, he said, using her training designation. Heard about New Bisan. Sorry about your sister. I need a blade, Sojin said. What kind of blade? Something that can cut through Velkari crystal armor. Something that will make them understand what they've done. Kang Hae-won set down his tools and studied Sojin's face. What he saw there made him nod slowly. I've been working on a project. Experimental stuff using Velkari metallurgy techniques we captured from their raiding ships. Want to see? He led her to a secured section of the workshop. On a workbench lay pieces of metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The material looked like crystallized darkness. This is processed Velkari ceremonial metal, Kang explained. We reverse-engineered their forging process and improved it with human nanotechnology. The result is something that can cut through their armor like it's made of paper. Sojin picked up one of the metal pieces. It was warm to the touch and, surprisingly, light. Can you make me a sword from this? A sword? That's an old-fashioned weapon. The Velkari respect traditional weapons. They think high-tech guns are for cowards. If I'm going to kill them, I want to do it in a way that destroys their pride along with their bodies. Kang Hae-won was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, and it was not a nice expression. I like the way you think. Give me a week. While Kang worked on the blade, Sojin spent her time in the xenobiology lab with Dr. Yudon. The scientist was a quiet woman who specialized in alien anatomy and physiology. Her lab was filled with preserved specimens and detailed holographic models of various species. I need to know everything about varibiology, Sojin told her. Weak points, nerve clusters, pressure points, everything. Dr. Yu activated a holographic display showing a Velkari warrior in full detail. The image rotated slowly, revealing internal organs, bone structure, and circulatory systems. Their crystal armor grows from modified skin cells, Dr. Yu explained. It's incredibly strong, but it has joints that must remain flexible. Here, here, and here. She pointed to spots on the hologram. Strike these points with sufficient force and you can cause paralysis or death. Sojin memorized every detail. She learned that Velkari had a secondary heart that could be stopped with precise pressure. She discovered nerve bundles that, when severed, would cause excruciating pain. Most importantly, she found psychological weaknesses that had nothing to do with physical anatomy. They're pack hunters by evolution, Dr. Yu said. Solitary Velkari become anxious and make poor decisions. If you can separate one from the group, it becomes much easier to defeat. What about their death rituals? Sojin asked. Interesting question. They believe that how a warrior dies determines their status in the afterlife. A clean death in combat is honorable. A slow, painful death is seen as punishment from their gods? Sojin smiled for the first time since hearing about New Bizin. It was a cold expression that made Dr. Yu take a step backward. A week later, Kanghae-won presented Sojin with her weapon. The sword was beautiful in a terrible way. The blade was made from the processed Valkyrie metal, dark as space and sharp enough to cut through diamond. The handle was wrapped in synthetic leather that matched the texture of human skin. I inscribed something on the blade, Kang said. Valkyrie script. That translates roughly to remember the severed hand. Sojin held the sword and felt its perfect balance. The weight was distributed exactly right for her cybernetic hand's enhanced grip strength. When she swung it through the air, the blade made no sound at all. It's perfect, she said. There's more. Kang activated a control on his workbench. The sword's blade began to glow with a faint blue light. Molecular vibration field. It destabilizes the crystal matrix of Valkyrie armor on contact. Even a light cut will spread fractures through their entire body covering. Sojin practiced with the new weapon for hours, learning its characteristics and capabilities. The sword felt like an extension of her cybernetic hand, responding to her thoughts as much as her movements. That night, she sat in her quarters holding the blade across her knees. On the wall screen, news reports continued to flow in from New Bizan. Rescue. Teams were finding more bodies. The death toll was climbing toward 400,000. Among the dead were 3,000 children. Sojin thought about her sister Min-A, who had dedicated her life to teaching and protecting young people. She thought about those children hiding in the school basement. While Valkyrie warriors hunted them like animals, the rage that had been burning in her chest since Nexus 7 grew hotter and brighter, but it was no longer wild and unfocused. It had been refined and sharpened like the blade in her hands. Elder Thakmur had wanted to teach humans about strength. He had shown them what happened when predators hunted prey. Now, Sojin was going to teach him what happened when prey evolved into something else entirely, something that hunted predators. She stood up and walked to the window that looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Valkyrie Empire was celebrating their victory over New Bizan. They thought they had proven human weakness once and for all. So-Jin raised her new sword and watched starlight reflect off its dark surface. The blade seemed to drink in the light, just like she had learned to absorb pain and transform it into purpose. Soon, very soon. 2 years after losing her hand, the woman who used to be Lee So-Jin stood on the bridge of a ship that didn't officially exist. The vessel was called the Retribution, though that name appeared in no registry. It was a stealth corvette built using technology that human governments claimed they didn't possess. The ship was small compared to military battlecruisers, but it was fast and nearly invisible to most scanning equipment. Its hull was covered in adaptive camouflage that could mimic empty space or asteroid debris. Inside, every system was designed for one purpose: hunting enemies who thought they were safe. So-Jin no longer used her real name. The crew called her Captain Ghost after her training designation at Titan Base. She wore a black uniform with no insignia and no rank markings. Her cybernetic hand had been upgraded again. It now contained computer interfaces, weapon targeting systems, and other tools that made her more machine than human. She stood at the main view screen, watching a Valkyrie supply convoy moving through hyperspace. 3 cargo ships and 2 escort vessels, carrying weapons and supplies to reinforce. The occupation of New Bizan intelligence reports said the convoy would reach its destination in 6 hours. It would never arrive. Captain, called Major Lee Dong-sik from the tactical station. All ships are maintaining course. No signs they've detected us. Lee Dong-sik had been Sojin's first officer for 8 months. He was a hard man with burn scars covering half his face, souvenirs from a Valkyrie raid that killed his entire battalion. Like everyone else on the Retribution, He was officially dead, killed in action with no body recovered. The crew of the Retribution were ghosts in more ways than one. They had all lost everything to alien aggression and been given a chance to do something about it. Human command didn't acknowledge their existence, but certain admirals made sure they had the resources they needed. Engineering status? Sojin asked. All systems green, reported Chief Engineer Lin Sunmi. She was a small woman with clever hands who had watched her homeworld burn from orbit while trapped on a damaged evacuation ship. Stealth field is holding steady. Weapons are charged and ready. Sojin activated her command interface with a thought transmitted through her cybernetic hand. Data flowed directly into her brain, ship positions, weapon ranges, tactical assessments. The technology was experimental and slightly illegal, but it made her faster and more accurate than any normal human could be. Begin the approach, she ordered. Remember, we want survivors from the lead cargo ship. The others can be destroyed completely. The Retribution moved closer to its targets like a shadow sliding across the stars. Its engines made no sound in the vacuum of space, and its hull absorbed scanner beams rather than reflecting them. To the Valkyrie crews, everything seemed normal right up until the moment death arrived. Weapons range in 30 seconds, Dongseek reported. So-Jin thought about the cargo these ships were carrying. Weapons that would be used to kill more human civilians. Supplies to support Valkyrie troops occupying the ruins of new Bizan medical equipment to heal warriors so they could kill again. Fire, she said. The Retribution's main guns fired in complete silence. Streams of plasma tore through the void and struck the Valkyrie escort ships. The alien vessels exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Their crystal-armored hulls no match for human military technology. The cargo ships tried to run, but they were too slow and too heavy. The Retribution pursued them like a hunting animal, its weapon systems targeting engines and life support systems with surgical precision. 2 of the cargo ships died quickly. Their crews vaporized before they could send distress signals. The third ship, the one Sojin wanted, found its engines disabled and its hull breached in non-critical areas. It drifted helplessly as the Retribution closed in. Boarding pods away, reported Sergeant Ko Minyoung from the Marine Bay. She had transferred to the Retribution after completing her own advanced training. Like the others, she had volunteered for missions that officially didn't happen. Sojin watched on the tactical display as her boarding teams cut their way into the crippled cargo ship. The Valkyrie crew would be confused and terrified. They had never faced humans who fought with this level of skill and ruthlessness. 20 minutes later, the boarding teams returned with 3 Valkyrie prisoners and a complete manifest of the ship's cargo. As expected, it contained weapons destined for New Bizan, along with detailed intelligence about Valkyrie military operations in human space. Sojin walked to the interrogation chamber where the prisoners were being held. The Valkyrie warriors were secured in restraints designed specifically for their species. Their crystal armor had been removed, leaving them looking smaller and more vulnerable than usual. The lead prisoner was a ship captain named Kralson. His yellow eyes glowed with rage and fear as Sojin entered the room. When he saw her cybernetic hand, recognition flickered across his features. "You," he hissed in broken human language. "The severed hand human. Thakmer spoke of you. You should be dead." "I was," Sojin replied calmly. "Your people killed the diplomat. What you're looking at now is what grew back in her place." She activated a recording device and set it on the table between them. "I want you to send a message to Elder Thakmer. For me, I will tell him nothing, soft flesh." Sojin's cybernetic hand moved faster than Kralson could track. Metal fingers closed around his throat with just enough pressure to make breathing difficult but not impossible. "You misunderstand," she said. "I'm not asking. This is what's going to happen. You're going to record a message telling Thakmer exactly what happened here. You're going to describe how humans destroyed your convoy without taking a single casualty. Then you're going to warn him that the ghost of the severed hand is coming for him personally. And if I refuse?" Sojin increased the pressure slightly. Carlson gasped and his eyes widened. Then I'll demonstrate some of the things I learned about Valkyrie physiology. Did you know that your species has a nerve cluster right here? She touched a spot on his neck with her free hand. Pressure applied there causes excruciating pain but no permanent damage. I can keep you conscious and screaming for days. Carlson stared into her eyes and saw something that made his crystal armor instinctively try to grow back. This human's gaze held no anger, no passion, no emotion at all. It was the cold assessment of a predator deciding how to kill its prey. I will record your message, he whispered. An hour later, the message was complete and transmitted on Valkyrie military frequencies. Carlson had delivered Sojin's words exactly as instructed, his voice shaking with fear and humiliation. The three prisoners were then loaded into an escape pod with just enough supplies to reach the nearest Valkyrie outpost. Sojin wanted them to survive long enough to spread the story of what had happened. As the Retribution prepared to leave the battle site, Sojin stood on the bridge watching the wreckage of the convoy drift through space. Debris from the destroyed ships glittered in the light of a distant star. Captain, Dong-Sik said, intelligence reports that Thakemer is mobilizing additional forces to hunt us. They're calling us terrorists. Good, Sojin replied. Terrorists are unpredictable. Ghosts are something else entirely. She activated the ship's intercom to address the entire crew. Attention all hands. Today we sent a message to the Valkyrie Empire. We showed them that humans are no longer helpless prey waiting to be slaughtered. But this is just the beginning. Her voice carried to every corner of the ship, reaching ears that had heard too much alien laughter over human screams. For too long, species like the Valkyrie have seen us as weak because we prefer diplomacy to violence. They mistake our desire for peace as inability to wage war. Today we began teaching them the difference. In the Marine quarters, soldiers who had lost families and friends nodded grimly. In engineering, technicians who had seen their homes burned smiled as they maintained weapon systems. On the bridge, officers who had watched helplessly as aliens killed civilians felt something they hadn't experienced in years: hope. The Valkyrie call us soft-flesh creatures, Sojin continued. They think our skin makes us vulnerable. They don't understand that soft flesh can adapt, can evolve, can become something harder than any crystal armor when pushed too far. She looked out at the stars where other Valkyrie ships were hunting for them, confident in their superiority and certain of their eventual victory. We are the Retribution. We are the ghosts of everyone they've killed. And we're going to teach them that some lessons are paid for in blood. The ship's engines powered up, carrying the Retribution away from the battle site and deeper into space. Behind them, the wreckage of the convoy drifted like a tombstone, marking the spot where the Valkyrie Empire's sense of invincibility had begun to die. In her private quarters, Sojin sat at her desk and wrote in a journal that no one else would ever read. Her cybernetic hand moved across the page with mechanical precision, recording thoughts and plans that would never appear in any official report. Day 847 since Nexus 7, she wrote. First successful operation complete. 3 Valkyrie ships destroyed, minimal resources expended, message delivered. Thakemer will be angry now. Good, angry enemies make mistakes. She paused and flexed her metal fingers, watching the joints move in the dim light. Minay, I know you would not approve of what I've become. You always. Elder Thakemer stood in his war chamber aboard the battle cruiser Crushing Fang, staring at reports that made his blood boil. In the past 6 months, the human called Ghost of the Severed Hand had destroyed 12 Valkyrie convoys, killed hundreds of his warriors, and made the mighty Valkyrie Empire look weak in front of the entire galaxy. The chamber was decorated with trophies from 1,000 victories, human skulls, alien weapons, and banners taken from conquered worlds. But now those prizes felt like mockeries. How could the greatest warrior species in the galaxy be losing to a single human female with a metal hand? War Chief Kroleth, Thakemer called to his nephew, who stood examining tactical displays. You have studied this ghost creature. What is your assessment? Kroloth was younger than his uncle, but already famous throughout the Empire for his victories against the Terran colonies. His crystal armor was pure black, polished to mirror brightness, and covered in ceremonial scars that marked his kills. She is clever, uncle. She uses our own honor code against us. When we expect honorable combat, she strikes from shadows. When we prepare for cowardice, she challenges us to single combat using our own traditions. Thakmura's claws scraped against the metal table. She is a soft-flesh animal playing tricks. Nothing more. With respect, Elder, she is more than that. Now, Kroloth activated a holographic display showing recent battle sites. Look at the pattern. She doesn't just kill our warriors, she humiliates them. She leaves survivors to tell stories that make us look foolish. She's conducting psychological warfare. The display showed the wreckage of the supply convoy that had been attacked 3 days earlier. The Ghost had left one ship intact with its crew alive, but stripped of all weapons and armor. The surviving Valkyrie had been forced to send a message describing their defeat in detail. The other species are beginning to question our strength. Kroloth continued. If we cannot defeat one human, how can we claim to be the galaxy's apex predators? Thakmur slammed his fist on the table, leaving dents in the metal surface. Then we will prove our strength by bringing me her head. Gather your best warbands. Hunt her down and end this embarrassment. It won't be that simple. She knows our tactics, our technology, our psychology. Whoever trained her understood us better than we understand ourselves. Are you afraid of one crippled human female? Kroloth's eyes blazed with anger. I fear no one, uncle, but I respect dangerous enemies. This Ghost has killed some of our finest warriors. She deserves our full attention. 3 days later, Kroloth's hunting fleet received a transmission that made the war chief's blood sing. With anticipation, it was a message from the Ghost herself, sent on open frequency so every Valkyrie in the sector could hear it. War Chief Kroloth of the Crushing Fang, the human's voice was calm and cold. I know you're looking for me. I'm tired of running. If you want to face the Ghost of the Severed Hand, come to the dead world of Kepler 442b. Come alone, if you have the courage. Let's settle this the old way, warrior to warrior, blade to blade. The message included coordinates and a challenge written in formal Valkyrie script. It was a proper duel invitation according to ancient traditions, complete with ritual phrases that no human should have known. She's baiting us, warned Kroloth's second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Tormek. This has to be a trap. Of course it's a trap, Kroloth replied. But it's also an opportunity. She's finally agreed to fight honorably instead of hiding in shadows. What if she has reinforcements waiting? Then we'll destroy them all, Kroloth studied the tactical display. But I don't think she does. This human has been operating alone, trying to prove something to herself. She wants to face me in single combat to test her newfound strength. Kepler 442b was a barren world orbiting a dying star. Its surface was covered in crystal formations that had grown over millions of years, creating a maze of natural amphitheaters perfect for ritual combat. The planet had no atmosphere, no life, and no strategic value, which made it ideal for a duel. Kroloth's fleet arrived first and took position in orbit. Scanners showed no sign of the Ghost ship, but that meant nothing. Human stealth technology was more advanced than the Valkyrie admitted publicly. War Chief, his communications officer reported, we're receiving another transmission. The Ghost's image appeared on the main screen. She wore black armor that seemed to absorb light and held a sword that gleamed with alien metal. Her cybernetic hand was visible, its metal surface reflecting the chamber's lighting. Kroloth, she said, I'm waiting on the planet's surface in the Crystal Valley. Coordinates are attached to this message. Come down alone as tradition demands and let's finish what your uncle started. But something was wrong with the transmission. The image flickered and distorted in ways that suggested electronic interference. Worse, the audio track contained strange echoes and whispers that made Kroloth's warriors nervous. Technical problems, Tormek suggested, but his voice lacked conviction. Kroloth wasn't so sure. He had fought humans before and knew they were Masters of psychological warfare. This distorted transmission might be intentional, designed to unnerve his crew before the battle even began. Prepare my shuttle, he ordered. Select an honor guard of 12 warriors. We go down immediately. The shuttle descended through Kepler 442b's thin atmosphere and landed in the Crystal Valley. The landscape was beautiful and terrible, towering. Formations of pure crystal jutted from the ground like frozen lightning, creating natural walls and chambers that stretched for kilometers. Kroleth and his honor guard advanced through the crystal maze, following the coordinates to the designated dueling ground. The silence was oppressive. Their footsteps echoed strangely off the crystal walls, creating phantom sounds that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. War Chief, one of his warriors whispered. Something feels wrong here. Kroleth felt it too. The crystal formations seemed to be watching them, reflecting their images in distorted ways that made them look like monsters. Shadows moved at the edges of their vision, always disappearing when they turned to look directly. They reached the dueling ground, a circular chamber surrounded by crystal walls that rose 30 meters into the air. The floor was smooth and level, perfect for combat. At the center stood a figure in black armor. The ghost of the severed hand waited for them with her sword drawn. But something was wrong with her appearance. Her image seemed to flicker and shift, sometimes showing the human warrior they expected, sometimes showing something else entirely. "Welcome, Kroleth," the ghost said. Her voice came from everywhere at once, echoing off the crystal walls with supernatural resonance. "I've been looking forward to this meeting. Show yourself properly, human," Kroleth demanded. "Face me without tricks and illusions." The ghost laughed, and the sound multiplied until it seemed like dozens of voices were laughing at once. "Tricks? Illusions? War Chief, you still don't understand what you're dealing with?" The air around them filled with holographic projections. Images of Kroleth's uncle cutting off the human diplomat's hand played on the crystal walls. The sound of her screams echoed through the chamber, mixed with the laughter of Velkari warriors who had watched the mutilation. "Stop this," Kroleth snarled. But the projections continued. Now the walls showed images from New Bizun Velkari warriors killing human children, mounting heads on spikes, burning schools and hospitals. The ghost sister appeared in the projections, dying while trying to protect students in a basement. "You wanted to know what created the ghost?" the human said. Her image solidified as rage filled her voice. "You're looking at it. Every dead child, every murdered civilian, every act of cruelty your species committed, it all went into making me what I am." Kroleth's honor guard was becoming agitated. The psychological warfare was more effective than he had anticipated. Some of his warriors were backing toward the exits, while others were drawing their weapons despite the duel's formal rules. "Enough!" Kroleth roared. He charged forward, his ceremonial blade gleaming in the reflected light. The ghost met his charge with impossible speed. Her black sword clashed against his traditional weapon, and the impact sent shockwaves through the crystal chamber. But something was wrong. His blade, forged from the finest Velkari metals, developed hairline cracks from the contact. "Your weapons are based on honor and tradition," the ghost said as they circled each other. "Mine is based on science and hatred. Guess which one is stronger?" They fought with deadly grace through the crystal chamber. Kroleth was one of the finest warriors of his generation, trained from birth in the martial traditions of his people. But the ghost fought with techniques he had never seen, a mixture of Velkari, honor combat, and human ruthlessness that confused and frustrated him. When he expected her to follow traditional forms, she struck from unexpected angles. When he tried to adapt to human tactics, she shifted back to classical dueling patterns. It was like fighting a mirror that reflected his own skills while adding something alien and dangerous. The psychological projections continued throughout the battle. Images of his uncle's cruelty mixed with scenes of human suffering, creating a backdrop of horror that made concentration difficult. "Your people think strength means causing pain," the ghost said as their blades locked together. "Let me show you what real Admiral Fakemar stood on the bridge of his flagship World Crusher, watching the ruins of New Bizen grow larger on the main view screen. The dead colony world hung in space like a wounded animal, its cities still smoking from the destruction his forces had brought 2 years earlier behind him. The largest Valkyrie battle fleet ever assembled waited for his orders. 300 warships carrying 50,000 of the Empire's finest warriors. It was enough firepower to reduce entire solar systems to ash, all focused on destroying one human with a metal hand. "Elder," his communications officer reported, "our scouts confirm the Ghost's transmission. She is in the ruins of the main colony, waiting for us." Fakemar's claws scraped against the railing as he studied the tactical display. The human had sent her challenge 3 days ago, a formal declaration of war broadcast on all frequencies. She had claimed responsibility for every Valkyrie death in the past 2 years and promised to finish what he had started on Nexus 7. "It makes no sense," muttered War Chief Drakmor, the replacement for Fakemar's dead nephew. "Why would she trap herself on a dead world with no escape route?" "Because she's finally ready to die," Fakemar replied. "The creature has run out of tricks and places to hide. Now she faces the full might of the Valkyrie Empire." But even as he said the words, something felt wrong. The Ghost had never made mistakes before. Every attack, every ambush, every psychological manipulation had been perfectly calculated. Why would she suddenly abandon tactics that had worked so well? "Begin the bombardment," Fakemar ordered. "Reduce the surface to molten glass. I want nothing left of this human pest." The fleet's main guns opened fire. Streams of plasma and particle beams lanced down toward New Bizan's surface, targeting the coordinates where the Ghost waited. The bombardment was precise and overwhelming. Nothing could survive such concentrated firepower. Explosions bloomed across the colony's remains like deadly flowers. Buildings that had somehow survived the original attack were vaporized. The very ground melted and reformed under the assault. Any normal enemy would have been destroyed in the first seconds, but then something impossible happened. "Return fire." Began rising from the planet's surface. "Report?" Fakemar roared as his ship's shields flared under unexpected attack. "Unknown weapon signatures?" the tactical officer replied, his voice shaking. "The energy patterns don't match any technology in our databases." More weapons fire erupted from hidden positions across New Bizan. The Ghost hadn't come here alone. She had brought an entire fleet of ships that had somehow remained hidden until this moment. "Stealth ships," War Chief Drakmor breathed. "Human stealth technology. They'd been waiting in the ruins." One by one, ships began appearing on the Valkyrie sensors as their cloaking fields dropped. But these weren't normal human vessels. They were a collection of damaged warships, cargo haulers, and civilian craft that had been heavily modified with weapons and armor. "Impossible," Fakemar whispered. "These ships were destroyed in our raids. I saw the wreckage myself." "They were salvaged and rebuilt," came a new voice over the communication channel. The Ghost's image appeared on every screen in the Valkyrie fleet. "Did you really think all those humans you killed would stay dead?" Behind her, the bridge of her command ship was visible. The crew working at their stations wore mismatched uniforms and improvised equipment. Some had visible scars from Valkyrie attacks. Others showed the pale skin of people who had lived too long in space. "Meet the New Bizan defense fleet," the Ghost continued. "Every ship crewed by people you thought you had killed. Survivors from destroyed colonies, refugees from burned worlds, families of the murdered dead. They've been waiting 2 years for this moment." The battle erupted in full fury. The Valkyrie fleet was larger and more powerful, but the human ships fought with desperate cunning. They used the debris field around New Bizan as cover, striking from unexpected angles and disappearing back into the wreckage. Captain Bay Sangwoo commanded the converted cargo hauler Remember Them. His ship had been a peaceful merchant vessel before the Valkyrie attacked his home colony. Now it bristled with weapons salvaged from a dozen different sources. "All batteries focus fire on their command ship," he ordered. "Make them pay for every human life they took." The Remember Them and 5 other converted ships concentrated their fire on a Valkyrie battle cruiser. The alien vessel's shields flared and collapsed under the sustained assault. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull as the ship began to break apart. Meanwhile, Sergeant Ko Min-young led a boarding action against a damaged Valkyrie destroyer. Her team had trained for this moment, close combat against crystal-armored warriors in the confined spaces of their own ships. "Remember New Bizan?" she shouted as her soldiers cut through the alien vessel's hull. "Remember the children!" The fighting was brutal and personal. These humans weren't professional soldiers. Following orders, they were survivors seeking justice for murdered families. They fought with a fury that shocked even the warrior-bred Valkyrie on the bridge of the World Crusher. Thakmur watched his fleet being torn apart by enemies he had dismissed as weaklings. The humans were using tactics he had never seen before. Coordinated swarm attacks, kamikaze runs, and boarding actions that seemed designed to cause maximum psychological impact rather than strategic advantage. "Elder," War Chief Drakmor reported, "we're losing ships faster than projected. The humans are fighting like ... Like what? Like us, like Valkyrie warriors defending their home nests?" The observation chilled Thakmor more than he cared to admit. The Valkyrie Empire had ruled through superior individual combat skills and unbreakable warrior spirit. But now humans were demonstrating those same qualities, enhanced by technological advantages and tactical flexibility that the Valkyrie lacked. The tide of battle began to turn as more human ships emerged from hiding places throughout the system. The Ghost had not just assembled a fleet, she had created a network of survivors who had spent 2 years preparing for this moment. "Sir," the tactical officer called out, "something is approaching from the planetary surface. Single craft, moving at incredible speed." Thakmur looked at the display and felt his blood chill. Rising from New Bizan's ruins came a ship unlike anything he had seen before. It was sleek and black, covered in adaptive armor that seemed to drink in light. Energy readings suggested it was powered by technology far beyond normal human capabilities. "The Retribution," he whispered. The Ghost's personal ship moved through the battle like a living thing, weaving between explosions and weapon fire with impossible grace. Its guns spoke with surgical precision, striking Valkyrie ships in exactly the right places to cause maximum damage, but its real target was obvious, the World Crusher itself. "All ships, protect the flagship," Drakmor ordered. "Concentrate fire on that vessel." Dozens of Valkyrie ships turned their weapons on the Retribution, filling space with enough firepower to destroy a small moon. But the human ship danced through. The deadly barrage, its pilot demonstrating skills that defied belief, on the bridge of the Retribution. Sojin sat in her command chair with neural interface cables connected directly to her cybernetic hand. She was no longer just commanding. The ship, she was the ship. Her consciousness flowed through its systems, making her reflexes faster than any purely biological pilot could achieve. "Captain," Major Lee Dongsik reported, "we're through their defensive screen. Clear approach to the World Crusher." "Good. Begin boarding sequence. Breach their docking bay and prepare assault teams." Sojin's voice was calm despite the chaos of battle around them. "It's time to finish this personally." The Retribution accelerated toward Thakmur's flagship, absorbing hits from desperate defending ships. Its adaptive armor held against the punishment, and its stealth systems made targeting difficult even at close range. As they approached the World Crusher, Sojin stood up from her command chair and walked to the airlock where her assault team waited. She wore her black combat armor and carried the dark sword that had killed Thakmur's nephew. Her cybernetic hand had been upgraded with additional weapon systems for this final confrontation. "Corporal Bei Sangwoo, Sergeant Ko Min-young," she addressed her most trusted warriors. "Today we end this war. Today we show the galaxy what happens when predators mistake mercy for weakness." The assault team was small but deadly, 12 humans who had lost everything to Valkyrie brutality and learned to transform their pain into weapons. They had trained together for months, preparing for this moment when they would board the enemy flagship and face their tormentors directly. "Remember, Sojin continued. We're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every human who died because the galaxy thought we were too weak to defend ourselves. We're fighting to make sure no other species ever underestimates humanity again. The Retribution slammed into the World Crusher-S docking bay with tremendous force. Cutting torches began burning through the hull as Sojin's assault team prepared to breach the enemy ship. Alarms screamed throughout the Valkyrie flagship as emergency. Bulkhead sealed and warrior crews rushed to repel boarders, but the humans had studied Valkyrie ship designs for 2 years. They knew exactly where to cut, which systems to target, and how to move through the vessel's corridors most efficiently. The breach was explosive and violent. 3 months after the Battle of New Bizen, the woman known as the Ghost of the Severed Hand sat in a military tribunal room on Earth. The walls were covered with flags from human colonies, including a new one bearing the emblem of New Bizen. A phoenix rising from ashes. Admiral Choi Min-seok sat across from her at a polished table, reviewing reports that documented 2 years of unauthorized military operations. Beside him sat General Park Hyun-woo from Human Defense Command and Dr. Sarah Chung from the Diplomatic Corps. Captain Lee Sojin, Admiral Choi began formally, you stand accused of conducting illegal military operations, violating interstellar law, and operating outside the chain of command. How do you respond to these charges? Sojin looked at her hands, one flesh, one metal, folded calmly on the table. She wore a simple civilian outfit instead of her black combat armor. Without the weapons and intimidating gear, she looked almost normal, almost human. I respond that Captain Lee Sojin died on Nexus 7 station, she said quietly. I am what grew back in her place. That's not an answer we can put in the official record, General Park said. The actions of the Retribution and her crew need to be accounted for. 12 destroyed Valkyrie convoys, hundreds of enemy casualties, and the complete collapse of their empire's military structure. And the successful rescue of over 10,000 human prisoners from Valkyrie labor camps, Dr. Chun added. Don't forget that part. Whatever else happened, your actions saved lives. Sojin looked up at the 3 officers. They represented different aspects of humanity's response to her war, military pragmatism, political necessity, and diplomatic hope. She wondered which one would win. What do you want from me? She asked. We want to understand, Admiral Choi replied. 2 years ago, you were our most promising diplomatic officer. You believed in peaceful solutions and interspecies cooperation. What changed? Sojin raised her cybernetic hand and flexed the metal fingers. The servos made soft whirring sounds in the quiet room. They cut off my hand to teach me about strength, she said. They murdered my sister and 300,000 other civilians to prove their superiority. They broadcast images of human children's heads on spikes to show the galaxy we were prey animals. She stood up and walked to the window that looked out over Earth's capital city. Below, millions of humans went about their daily lives, safe because others had fought to protect them. I learned their lesson very well. Strength is the only thing the galaxy respects. Mercy is seen as weakness. Diplomacy only works when backed by the threat of overwhelming violence. So you became a terrorist, General Park said bluntly. Sojin turned back to face them. Her eyes held no anger, no emotion at all. They were the cold, calculating gaze of a predator evaluating potential threats. I became what they made me. A weapon designed to teach a specific lesson, that humans are not prey. We are not weak. And we do not forgive those who mistake our desire for peace as inability to wage war. Dr. Chun leaned forward, but at what cost? The woman who wanted to build bridges between species is gone. What's left in her place? Something that ensures no other diplomats will lose their hands. Something that makes alien species think twice before attacking human colonies. Something that protects people like my sister's students. The room was quiet for several minutes. Outside, the sounds of city traffic provided a backdrop of normal life, the life that Sojin's war had helped preserve. The Valkyrie Empire has requested a formal peace treaty, Admiral Choi said finally. They want to negotiate an end to hostilities and establish new boundaries for both species. Let me guess, Sojin said with a bitter smile. They want to negotiate. With the ghost of the severed hand, not the diplomatic corps. They're afraid of you, General Park admitted. Every species in this sector is afraid of you. They've seen what happens when humanity is pushed too far. Good, fear keeps people alive. My sister would be alive today if the Valkyrie had been afraid of human retaliation. Dr. Chun stood up and activated a holographic display. It showed star charts with trade routes, military positions, and diplomatic relationships between dozens of species. Look at what you've accomplished, she said. 3 new species have requested formal alliances with humanity. The Andromedan Collective has offered us advanced technology in exchange for mutual defense pacts. Even the Zephyrian Empire, which has never acknowledged human existence, is sending ambassadors. The display showed the ripple effects of Sojin's war spreading across known space. Species that had seen humans as weak prey were now reconsidering their positions. Some sought alliance, others offered tribute, and many simply avoided human space entirely. The galaxy has learned to respect us, Dr. Chung continued, but they respect us through fear, not trust. Is that the legacy you wanted? Sojin studied the star charts for a long time. Her cybernetic hand interfaced with the display. Controls calling up detailed information about each species and their current relationship with humanity. Respect built on fear is still respect, she said finally. And fear-based respect keeps people alive longer than trust-based respect. What about the future? Admiral Choi asked. What happens to the ghost of the severed hand now? You can't. Keep fighting forever, can't I? Sojin turned away from the display. There are other species out there. Other predators who think humans are easy prey. The lesson needs to be reinforced occasionally. The Human Defense Council has a proposal, General Park said. He activated his own datapad and transmitted files to the room's central display. We want to offer you a position as head of Special Operations Command. Official recognition, legal, authority, unlimited resources. The proposal was comprehensive. Sojin would command a fleet of ghost ships crewed by officially dead operatives. Her mission would be to handle threats that couldn't be addressed through normal diplomatic or military channels. We need someone who can do what needs to be done, without worrying about public opinion or interstellar law, Admiral Choi explained. Someone who understands that sometimes peace requires the threat of terrible violence. Sojin read through the proposal carefully. It was everything she had built with the Retribution, but with official sanction and massive resource backing. She could protect humanity from threats that conventional forces couldn't handle, but it also meant accepting what she had become, the idealistic diplomat who had walked into that conference room on Nexus 7 would never return. The ghost of the severed hand would become a permanent fixture in humanity's defense structure. There's one condition, she said after reviewing the documents. Name. It, General Park replied. Elder Thakmer remains in my custody. He lives the rest of his life as a reminder of what happens to those who underestimate humanity. When he dies, his body will be displayed in the memorial we're building on New Bizan. The 3 officers exchanged glances. It was a cruel fate for a former leader, but no crueler than what the Valkyrie had done to human civilians. Agreed, Admiral Choi said. Do you accept the position? Sojin walked back to the window and looked out at the city below. Somewhere down there, children were going to school safely. Families were eating dinner together. People were living normal lives because others were willing to do terrible things to protect them. The diplomat who wanted to save everyone is dead, she said without turning around. But maybe what replaced her can save more people by being willing to damn herself. She turned back to face the tribunal, her decision made. I accept. But I want it understood that the ghost of the severed hand doesn't take prisoners, doesn't show mercy, and doesn't worry about the moral implications of necessary actions. You're not hiring a human being, you're unleashing a weapon. We understand, Dr. Chun said quietly. May God forgive us all. 6 months later, reports began filtering in from the Outer Rim. A new alien species called the hegemony had begun testing human defenses, probing colony worlds and capturing civilian ships. Their first major attack targeted a research station. With 5,000 inhabitants, the attack lasted 4 hours. When hegemony ships arrived to collect their prizes, they found the station evacuated and defended by a single black vessel that appeared from nowhere. The battle was over in minutes. Hegemony survivors sent panicked transmissions back to their fleet commanders, describing a human ship that fought like a living nightmare and a captain with a metal hand who showed no mercy to those who threatened her people. Within days, hegemony forces withdrew from human space entirely. Their leaders received a simple message: the ghost of the severed hand remembers. Stay away from human colonies or learn what your predecessors learned. The galaxy's newest predator species decided that easier prey could be found elsewhere. In her quarters aboard the Retribution, So-Jin sat at her desk writing in her private journal. Her cybernetic hand moved across the page with mechanical precision, recording thoughts that would never appear in any official report. Day 1247 since. Nexus 7, she wrote. The hegemony has been discouraged from further aggression. 2 of their ships were left intact to carry the message back to their territory. Sometimes the survivors are more valuable than the dead. She paused and looked at her reflection in the dark window. The face that stared back was harder than the diplomats had been, marked by years of violence and loss. But it was also the face of someone who had kept her promises. Mine, I know you would not recognize.